I'm Sergeant Storm working at a death row prison. This was the worst shift I've ever had. By Reddit user Lindsay Springs. Being a correctional officer for death row inmates can be a thankless, dark job. We deal with the worst of the worst, murderers and psychopaths, paired with the fact that we are around the same inmates for years at a time. As a CO, you begin to figure out which individuals are the most dangerous to society and to us and our staff. Escapes are few and far between. Every now and then we will have someone scale the razor wire fence and make a run for it. If you read my previous experience as a CO, you'll see that I'm not your typical officer by any means. Rumors have spread across the prison after Terry's little incident, to which I shrug and laugh. I mean, come on, me, a monster? What I've come to find is that the term monster is circumstantial. The real monsters that walk the planet are those that go unnoticed. The ones that blend into the crowd. They could be your neighbor, who waves at you every day when you come home from work, or a friend that you've known since kindergarten. Nevertheless, those monsters typically get caught, and when they do, they're brought here to await their death, a justified means to an end. A year ago, almost to the day, was when the most dangerous criminal we've ever had in the facility successfully escaped our prison. And due to a staff shortage, I was alone on my perimeter walk around the prison that particular night. Now let me start by saying that I'm not afraid of much, in most situations. But that night, walking the tree line out past the prison, I felt an unusual terror pricking at the nape of my neck. The worst kind of terror is that which you cannot identify. I remember getting extremely nervous, extremely quickly. The biggest issue is that I simply could not pinpoint where the fear was coming from, until I saw the red light. In the distance, much closer to the prison, I saw the faint blinking of the red emergency light. My mind shifted into overdrive at that moment. What was happening? Where were the sirens? I reached up to my shoulder and pressed the button on my radio, and in a pathetic attempt to seem calm, said, "What's the emergency lights, y'all? I think there's a malfunction." The radio sputtered and then went silent. I sat alone in that silence, standing still as a stone, listening closely to every sound around me. When my radio suddenly rang out its static, I felt my heart stop in my chest. "Cell number 8, the officer on the other line mumbled, has been breached." Then silence. I felt an overwhelming need to shift, to transform into my other self almost immediately. Cell number 8 was one of 3 solitary confinement cells that lined the end of the west wing of the prison. It was also the only cell in the entire prison that myself and the other staff had absolutely no access to. In training, I was told that cell number 8 was a holding cell for the federal marshals. The inmates kept there were so top secret that we were not even allowed entry into that portion of the prison when the cell was inhabited. I had no information, no description of the subject, and no idea what to do in this situation. I couldn't shift out of fear that I might be spotted by staff or other inmates. While standing at the edge of the woods, deep in my thoughts, I saw something that sent chills all the way down my spine. A figure ran far too quickly from the staff exit towards the barbed wire fencing that surrounded the prison. In one horrifying leap, it scaled the entire perimeter fence without even a hint of slowing down. My body froze, fear welling up in my throat as I watched the thing run towards the opposite side of the wood line. I knew 2 things immediately. That whatever that was that just jumped the fence was absolutely not human, and that there was no way it could have escaped with all the insane security measures that the prison offered. Now, despite the whole curse of the werewolf thing and working with death row inmates, I'm relatively normal. By normal, I mean I still feel pretty freaked out. It was at that height of fear that whatever that thing was hit me like a train running into a lost deer. I felt my bones shatter, but immediately reattached themselves back together in my animalistic form. By the time I hit the ground of the ditch I had been hit into, my body was fully transformed, and I was raging, ready to fight. By the time I reached the top of the ditch, whatever it was that hit me was gone. I couldn't even catch the scent. It was at this moment that I remembered the staff and COs back at the prison, and my heart sank. I had to get back there, and fast. I sprinted back towards the razor wire fence and jumped over the top gracefully. I saw the entrance door wide open and ran as fast as I could on all fours. Right as I was about to pass through the threshold of the prison, I was stopped by a wall-like force. I fell back, getting a bit dizzy with my eyes closed, when a man's hand grabbed me by the shoulder. Oh shit, I thought, these people can't know. They just can't. I heard a voice from the man who had stopped me, and realized he had to have an unusual strength. Sergeant Storm, don't worry. We know who and what you are. Open your eyes. I squinted into the bright light of a flashlight held by a man in a black suit and tie. He hoisted me up, and I moved my bones beneath my skin back into my human form. Don't worry, we're friendlies, he said as he wiped his hands off on his blazer. That prisoner that escaped, he was... I cut him off. Let me guess, not human, right? Don't have to tell me twice. I stood up and covered myself with an abandoned jacket laying nearby. The man shrugged and walked, and I followed behind him. Well, he was a human, once. As we walked, I saw the worst sight I could have seen at that moment. The bodies of my co-workers and support staff lay dead, riddled with huge tears across different parts of their bodies. I heard a faint whisper and looked around and found nobody it could have belonged to. I was so caught off guard by what I was seeing that I hadn't realized that the man in the suit had stopped abruptly ahead of me and was now facing my direction. He looked me dead in the eyes, the browns of his eyes outlined in a sparkly, shiny garnet. We need your assistance, Storm. We can clean up this mess and make it go away, I guarantee you. As he spoke, I heard a more clear whisper. All I could make out were the words, I'm and you, in a deep, harsh whisper. I focused my mind in, completely tuning out what the suit was saying. The whispering continued, deep, and I couldn't help but feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I'm for you. Sergeant Storm, the man snapped me back to his attention. Do you understand what I've said? That beast is a danger to everyone while loose. We can clean things up here, but we're going to need your help in catching him. I nodded, still feeling an uneasiness that was difficult to describe. I'll help. But what is that thing? I couldn't dare hide the terror in my voice. I don't think that you're a monster, Sergeant Storm, not in the moral sense, but the thing that just escaped that prison is both morally and physically a monster. It was a death row inmate who selected to participate in a secret experiment with the government. It was a murderer, a serial killer with death tolls in the hundreds. He cupped his hand around the back of his neck and sighed, and we need you to find him. I sighed and brought my fingers to my face to rub my temples. Okay, sir, what is it you need me to do? He looked at me again with the glint of red shining through his eyes. We need you to go after him, and we need to track your movements, so if you don't mind. He waved me on. Changing, we can get you fitted. I stopped dead in my tracks. Fitted? I questioned, almost aware of what that meant. Yes, Sergeant Storm, you'll need to be fitted with this. He pulled out what looked like some high-tech dog collar with some flashing lights and buttons, and a tiny radio attached to the collar. When you change, can you speak? He asked while I was still staring at the thing that was about to be put around my neck. Yeah, just real deep. Can't usually be understood. He brought the collar to me. And you're in full control of yourself during your shift, correct? He said while holding the collar for me to take. Yes, I am, Mr. Whoever you are. I'm not putting a damn thing on my body until you tell me who you are and what this thing does. He held the collar facing me and pointed to the buttons as he spoke. He started with an illuminated red button. This is your call for help. If you come across anything that you can't handle, press it. but only under those circumstances. He nodded at me. He looked at me sternly. I nodded. The next lights were, from what he told me, how they keep up with my vitals and keep track of where I'm at. A little antenna was attached, sticking straight up. The next was a high-tech earpiece to put in my ear in order to hear him and his government buddies through the radio. And last, a tiny microphone that would fit right below my snout. What's this one do? I pointed to the 3 round buttons on the other side. Put it on and I'll show you, he said, handing it to me, and you're going to want to be fully transformed before you put it on. He turned around, facing away from me, and said, "Ready when you are, Sergeant." I rolled my eyes and dropped the jacket. I began letting the bones fuse and rearrange. While my claws extended and my knees buckled back, the hair sprouted in, a dark black mane around my face. My nose elongated and I shook my head. It was complete. I stood up now, much taller than the man in the suit, and he turned around as I was clamping the collar together. He laughed a bit. "You ever seen Van Helsing?" he said in between laughs. "You look just like that motherfucker." I smirked as best I could. I wasn't even mad. Van Helsing was badass. Suddenly, I heard the raspy whisper coming again from behind me at a long distance, this time so clearly, and zoned the man completely out. "I'm coming back for you. Don't you worry." I looked back in the direction of the voice and whispered, "And I'll be waiting."